Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a potential major winter storm for portions of the southern, central, and eastern United States. This is going to be including portions of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and then back through into the Great Lakes and portions of the Northeast. The main aspect of this storm is actually not going to be the snow, but actually the ice with this, because some areas in Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, and surrounding areas could be picking up close to an inch of ice if some model projections are correct. We'll be giving you my snow, ice, and rainfall forecast at the end of the video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end, and let's get right into it here. So here's the current National Weather Service page. We'll go from west to east here. We have some winter weather advisories in those purples, and then in the pinks, that's where you're looking at winter storm warning. We see that for portions of the northwest as well as for portions of southwestern Texas there, and also for portions of Oklahoma, upstate New York, Pennsylvania, and into a little bit of Massachusetts and Connecticut there. And then we're dealing with some winter storm watches in effect in that blue for portions of central Texas into Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, with some more winter storm watches in effect for portions of central Pennsylvania. And then we have some extra winter storm watches actually for portions of northern Arkansas and to the south of there. We have some flood watches in effect. Now for Alaska, we also have some blizzard warnings in effect for the northwesternmost part of Alaska, but other than that, there's not a whole lot else going on except for this big winter storm. After that, I think we go into a quiet pattern for the next 4 or 5 days or so. Here's what the current European model is showing, and let's play this through for you guys and kind of break down what is going on within this model and what it's showing with this storm. So we have this first lead system out to the north that's going to head further to the east. It's going to end up somewhere right around here, and what that's going to do is drag along a cold front kind of like this, and then we're going to see all of this moisture that's pulling out from the Gulf of Mexico lead to some sort of low pressure forming right along Texas. This low pressure is going to head further to the north, be intercepted by this cold front, and then push further to the east. And what's going to happen is that we have this very cold air sliding in on the bottom end of the system in the lower levels of the atmosphere, but then in the upper levels of the atmosphere we actually have some very warm air that's injecting itself into the system. So we're seeing a little layer, and I'll kind of make a diagram for you guys. We have a layer of cold air here at the bottom and at the top parts of the atmosphere. So we have a layer of cold air, so that's going to freeze any of the rain that's falling down from the system. That maybe it's rain all the way down, but then we have a little area of 32 degrees that all that rain is going to instantly freeze upon contact, and that's how you get freezing rain to form, and that's what's going to be the biggest issue with this system. So let's play this through. By the way, if the Weather Channel were to name this, which I think they will name it as we get more winter storm warnings issued with this system, then this would be, I believe, Winter Storm John, if it were to be named. So this will be by Wednesday morning, so this will actually be this morning, kind of what's happening right now, and we have a wedge of cold air along the east coast, and then we have some more cold air on the back end of the system, but we see a lot of warm air out ahead of this. We have some rain out ahead of this, but we also do see a little bit of wintry mix along Texas and Oklahoma, and as we play this through, you start to see that system, that lead system, heads further east, and then we start to see some sort of low pressure evolve over portions of Texas there, as you're getting some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico to feed in there. We have some cold air on that western side of the system, so we do actually see some snow break out over portions of Texas and north central Mexico there. And as we continue this forward, you start to see that some of that snow continues to go on over those areas for quite a while. I would say that's maybe closer to 12 to 24 hours of constant moderate to even heavy snowfall at times. And as we continue this forward, I think you might actually see some snow if you live in central Texas right around this area, mainly because we are dealing with, or maybe just some ice, but some sort of winter precipitation, because we are dealing with a fairly sharp area of cold air that's trying to dig in on that southern side, and we're seeing it try to kind of go beneath the system with some of that warm air being pulled further to the north. So don't be surprised if you wake up with maybe a light coating of snow, or maybe you just see some flakes. Nothing that's going to be major, but I wouldn't be surprised if some areas where southern Texas are going to see some decent snowfall this system now starts to progress a little bit further north, and what we actually start to see is that we have over portions of Arkansas, maybe a little bit of ice start to set up over northwestern Arkansas, and then this is where it starts to get really dangerous with all this ice that's falling over Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and we see all that sleet and freezing rain and ice precipitation in that pink and then also in that orange there. So that's where you have to kind of take precaution. If you do live within that pink or in that orange where you're seeing some freezing rain, that's probably going to be a bigger issue than even if you got 12 or maybe even a little bit more inches of snowfall. So the ice is definitely going to be the biggest threat with this one, and it's definitely going to cause some major issues. Just go back about a month or so ago, and a little bit longer than that actually, where in portions of Oklahoma and Texas they saw 2, 3, 4 inches of ice, and it caused a lot of issues. This could be a lesser scale of that, but it could still cause a lot of issues, and I think it's important to look and kind of prepare for the worst but hope for the best with this system. So this would be by Friday morning. We're dealing with heavy icing over Kansas and Missouri. That's rain that's falling, but it's going to instantly freeze on contact. We're seeing some snow wrap around on that back end for Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas there. And then as we continue this forward, you start to see your first little signs of some ice over portions of the eastern U.S., so over portions of northern Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and then we see another area of some decent ice precipitation stretching from Kansas to about Indiana and Ohio there. And then as we continue to head this forward, you start to see more of that, more of the wintry precipitation starts to head a little bit further to the north as we get through the early afternoon hours on Friday, as you start to warm up the atmosphere, and then it plunges back down with those temperatures down back to around 32 degrees in a lot of these areas. And then portions of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, upstate New York, Michigan, Indiana are now into some of that ice, and then we're dealing with some snow potentially for portions of Missouri, Iowa, northwestern most Illinois, southernmost Wisconsin there, where you could be dealing with some light 1 to 3 inches or even a little bit more of snowfall added on to what you already saw with the previous storm. And then as we continue this forward, this is by Saturday morning, we're dealing with potentially actually some snow in portions of New England there, and also wrapping around on the backside into the lower Great Lakes. We're still dealing with some ice precipitation in the valleys of Pennsylvania and upstate New York there. And as we continue this forward, that system is now pulling away into portions of the Northeast, and now portions of northern New England, northern upstate New York are into the brunt of that snow, where I think that snow, that ice actually really starts to cut off as we get to probably the early afternoon or late morning on Saturday, where it's going to become mainly a rain to snow event, not really a rain to ice to snow event anymore after that. Here's your total ice accumulation, and this that was the end of the model run. The model run only goes out 90 hours, but the storm still hasn't finished over portions of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont by that point. So you could kind of extend some of that ice precipitation along the coast of Maine and along southeastern New Hampshire there, even though it's not showing that much. But you can see over portions of the plains, anywhere in those purples, that's where you're looking at maybe over half an inch to the darkest purple there. This shade of purple right here, that's over an inch of ice, and you see some isolated pockets around an inch of ice. That is a very major event. Usually a tenth of an inch of ice is enough to cause some issues. So you can imagine how if you're getting 10 times that, that could definitely cause a lot of issues. And even if you're just in that moderate shade of pink, that's near half an inch of ice, which is still very, very major and can cause quite a bit of problems. So the reason I'm showing the ice first before the snow is because that's kind of what's going to be more important. The ice is going to cause way more problems than any snow that this system is going to produce, and this is only going through Saturday early afternoon, so you're not seeing the complete system, especially if you live in eastern New England. Here's what the snowfall outlook looks like, and this is from the European model. What we just looked at was all the European model, and we're looking at anywhere in those grays under an inch to 2 inches, 2 to 6 inches in the blues, 6 to 10 inches in the purples, 10 to about 20 inches or even a little bit more in those pinks, and we're dealing with a little narrow stripe that I would say is maybe 100 miles wide or so. And that's going through portions of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, through portions of the Great Lakes. That's all from the system that's pretty much wrapping up right now that you see in the upper Great Lakes. And then over to the Northeast, that's where you're looking at maybe another 6 to 8 or maybe even a little bit more inches of snowfall. I think these amounts are a little bit overdone on that snowfall side. So I think you could maybe cut these in half or maybe takes 2/3 of what you're seeing on the screen, and that's probably going to be more of an accurate representation of what you actually see out of this system. Now, here's my forecast. Now, we're going to start off with the rainfall forecast. Under an inch of rain is expected in any of these light green areas, and that's pretty much everywhere that's along the track of the storm or southeast of the storm. This is going from Wednesday to about Sunday, so from today to Sunday, where I'm expecting about under an inch of any rain for these regions. But if you live in this kind of moderate shade of green, a little bit darker shade of green, where I'm looking at over an inch of rainfall, maybe up to 2 inches of rainfall in this green for portions of the southeast and really much of the eastern United States as a whole. 2 to 3 inches of snowfall in these regions along the coastal southeast, and then into a little portion of the Tennessee Valley, the central and southern Mississippi River Valley, and then down through Texas and Oklahoma there. That's where you're looking at over 2 inches, maybe as much as 3 inches, and maybe even a little bit more than that in these yellow regions, where I'm looking at 3 to maybe even 5 inches of snowfall or of rainfall here, and that's for portions of Texas, Arkansas, and then a little area around Missouri, Tennessee, and also into Kentucky there, and then another area of 3 to 5 inches for Florida and Georgia there. Now, this is your ice accumulation forecast. Under a tenth of an inch of ice, which can still cause some issues, but isn't the biggest threat in the world. If you were to see any snow, that would probably be a bigger threat than under a tenth of an inch of ice. It's definitely something to kind of keep in mind, but it's nothing that's going to cause too many issues if you're just in this layer. But if you're in this layer, this is where I think you need to start preparing, and definitely you need to start taking precautions, because this is your tenth of an inch to a quarter of an inch of ice area, and this is for a little area in Texas, and then another area for Oklahoma and Kansas northeastward into Michigan and Ohio, and then back through on the other side of the Great Lakes into portions of the northern Appalachians, and then through into Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and into Vermont and New Hampshire there. Here's that quarter of an inch to half an inch of ice, and this is where it's going to be a very, very major issue. You really need to take a lot of precautions, or just try to stay off the roads in general if you live within this area, just because of all this ice that's going to be falling, and that's for portions of Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, through Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and then another area for West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and then another area for southern Vermont there, where you could be dealing with some higher amounts, especially in some of those valley areas, and then half an inch to an inch of ice over portions of Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois, as well as another pocket for Indiana and Michigan, and then one more pocket for portions of Pennsylvania and upstate New York there. That's where you could be dealing with quite a bit of ice, and that's definitely where it's going to be a really, really big issue. And then 1 to 2 inches of ice, probably closer to an inch of ice, over portions of western Missouri and northeastern Missouri there. So if you live within any of those areas that are getting over a quarter of an inch of ice, or expected to get over a quarter of an inch of ice, that's a big issue, and you really shouldn't be on the roadways if you live within that area. Now, here would be your snowfall forecast. Under an inch of snow is expected in any of these light blue areas. That's basically from about Texas and New Mexico northeastward up into Maine and New Hampshire there. And then here's that 1 to 3 inch area, and you can see that for Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, through Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and into Michigan, and then portions of northern New England and northern upstate New York there. Here's that 3 to 6 inch area, and that's one area for southwestern Texas, and another area for Oklahoma and Kansas, and then one more area for northeastern upstate New York and into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Here's that 6 to 12 inch area, and you see that for southwestern Texas, and then also another area for northern New Hampshire and northern Maine out of that system. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Tomorrow's video will be the January forecast. The New Year's video will actually be the spring forecast, the first spring forecast, and I'll have 3 total spring forecasts for the year of 2021, and I'll kind of update them basically every month. So again, that is going to wrap it up for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.